I didn't expect her to notice me that day. Not really. I'd been sitting in the back of the lecture hall for weeks, pretending to take notes while mostly trying not to stare too long when she looked up from her papers. Professor Hale wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. The kind of woman who didn't need to raise her voice to command a room. She just existed, and the air adjusted for her. Every word she spoke seemed to land where it mattered. Calm, certain. But there was something in her stillness that felt almost like restraint, as if she was holding back an ocean. That morning, the light through the windows was thin and gold, catching in the strands of her hair as she wrote something on the board. Her wrist moved with that practice Grace teachers have, years of repetition worn into muscle memory. I was half lost in watching her until she turned around and looked directly at me. "Mr. Cole," she said, voice even, but softer than usual. "Stay after class for a moment, please." The room went quiet. A few heads turned. My throat went dry. When the others had filed out, she stayed behind her desk, stacking papers with deliberate precision. I waited, not sure what I was supposed to say. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. "You've been quiet lately," she said finally, without looking up. "I guess I didn't have much to add," I replied. My voice sounded younger than I wanted it to. She gave a faint smile. "That's not what I mean." There was something in the way she said it, an undertone, not quite flirtation, not quite reprimand. Just interest. She stepped out from behind her desk and leaned against it, arms crossed. Her blouse brushed against the edge of the wood. The faint scent of her perfume, warm, subtle, something like sandalwood, reached me. "You understand the material," she continued, eyes on me. "But you're holding back. I can see that." "I'm not sure how to fix that," I said. "Maybe," she said, tilting her head slightly, "you just need to be tested differently." The way the word tested left her mouth wasn't the way professors usually said it. It landed heavier, lingered in the air between us. My pulse jumped before I could stop it. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Her gaze softened, as if she hadn't meant for it to sound that way. But she didn't take it back either. Her hand brushed the papers beside her, then paused. A small, deliberate silence. "I'll make you an offer," she said, "if you're willing to take it seriously." I nodded, maybe too quickly. "I am." The corner of her mouth curved. Not quite a smile, not quite approval. "Good." She stepped closer, just enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence. Her eyes flicked to my notebook on the desk, then back to me. "Let's see if you can think under pressure," she said softly. The room felt smaller then. The clock ticked louder. I could hear the faint sound of her breathing. She leaned in, just slightly, to pick up my pen. Her fingers brushed mine. It wasn't accidental, or maybe it was, but neither of us moved away. For a heartbeat, the world held still. And then a sharp knock at the door. She straightened instantly, the moment evaporating like steam. "Come in," she said, her voice back to its steady, professional tone. I turned toward the door, but couldn't stop myself from glancing back at her. And there it was. That small, knowing smile. The one that made me forget every word I'd planned to say. Whatever test she had in mind, it had already begun. The next week, she stopped me in the hallway. No lecture hall, no audience. Just a quiet stretch of corridor where the walls carried our voices too easily. "Mr. Cole," she said, walking beside me for a few steps, "you submitted your essay early. That's rare." "I didn't want to keep you waiting," I said before I could think. "Came out wrong, too personal." Her eyes flicked toward me, amused, but there was something under it. "I see." We slowed near her office door. She held it open. 5 minutes, she said, like she was offering a challenge. Inside, the blinds were half drawn, sunlight cutting the room into quiet stripes. Her desk was cluttered, coffee half finished, pen cap chewed. It was strangely comforting. Proof she wasn't as untouchable as she looked from the back of the classroom. She took a seat, gestured for me to close the door. "Tell me something," she said. "Why are you here? In this class, I mean." "I like the way you teach," I said. Too honest again. She raised a brow. "That's not an academic reason." "I didn't say it was." Her lips parted slightly, not in surprise, more like she hadn't expected me to admit it so openly. The silence between us stretched thin. I watched her trace the rim of her mug with one finger, her ring catching a sliver of light. "You remind me of someone," she said finally. "A student I had years ago, bright, reckless. Thought he knew what he wanted. What happened to him?" She gave a small, dry laugh. "He grew up, realized some things are better left untested." There it was again, that word, tested. It landed the same way it had last time. Quiet, heavy, charged. She leaned forward, elbows on the desk, chin resting on her hand. "You're what, 22? 23. Her gaze softened for a second, like she was calculating the distance between our years. "You don't understand what that difference means yet." "I think I do." She looked away, a faint color rising in her cheeks. "You think it means something exciting. Doesn't. It means I should know better." I didn't answer. The air between us was too dense with things we weren't supposed to say. When I finally stood to leave, she rose too close. My shoulder brushed hers. Neither of us stepped back. Her hand lifted, almost instinctively, and touched my sleeve. Just a brief press of her fingers, light but grounding. It wasn't a romantic gesture. It wasn't anything, really, but her touch lingered like she'd forgotten to let go. Then she exhaled, barely audible. "You should go before someone sees." I nodded, even though I didn't move. For a second, we stayed there, her hand still resting against my arm, both of us pretending it was nothing. When she finally dropped it, I could still feel the warmth of her skin through the fabric. As I stepped into the hallway, I turned back. She was watching me from the doorway, eyes unreadable. "Professor Hale?" I said quietly. "Yes." I hesitated. "You never told me if I passed your last test." Her lips curved. That same smile again, small and deliberate. "You're still taking it." It started with a text. "Professor Hale asterisk. Can you stop by my office before class? I'd like to review your paper in person." I read it 3 times before answering. "Sure." When I arrived, the door was half open, lights dimmed from the rain outside. She stood by the window, sleeves rolled up, watching the gray sky. Her hair was pulled back loosely, and a single strand had escaped, tracing her jaw. "You're early," she said without turning. "You said before class." Faint smile. "You actually follow instructions." I set my bag down, closing the door gently behind me. The sound of rain against the glass filled the silence between us. She turned then, slower than necessary, and held out my paper. "You write like someone who's hiding something." I shrugged. "Maybe I am." Her eyes held mine for a beat too long. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured. "Why not?" "Because I might start believing you." The air thickened. She took a step closer, close enough that I caught the warmth of her perfume again. Softer this time, faintly floral beneath the rain. I could see the small crease at the corner of her mouth, the quick flutter of her pulse at her neck. "You make this difficult," she said quietly. "Do I?" She looked at me. Really looked, like she wanted to memorize my face and forget it all at once. Her hand lifted halfway, as if to touch my cheek, then stopped. Just then, a sharp knock at the door. She froze. We both did. A student's voice. "Professor Hale? Do you have a minute?" Her breath caught, eyes darting to the door, then back to me. "Stay quiet," she whispered. She opened the door just enough to speak through the crack. "I'm in a meeting right now, Olivia. Can it wait?" "Oh, sorry." "Sure, sorry." Footsteps retreated down the hall. She closed the door slowly, pressing her back against it. Her hand came up to her chest, like she was trying to slow her heartbeat. "That was close," I said, barely above a whisper. She laughed once, soft, nervous. "You shouldn't be here, but you asked me to come. That's the problem." Silence. Only the rain now, tapping against the glass, steady as breathing. She stepped forward again, each movement deliberate, conflicted. "You don't know what this would do to me," she said. "If anyone found out, I'm not anyone. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. Her hand brushed my arm, barely, but enough. Don't, she said, but it sounded like she didn't mean it. I should have moved back. I didn't. She didn't either. The space between us vanished to inches. Her voice dropped lower, rougher. You're making it impossible to think straight. So stop thinking, I whispered. For a second, we both forgot the world, the door, the rules, the rain. She leaned in, just slightly, breath touching my skin. Then she pulled back, sharp and sudden, like waking from a dream. Her eyes shimmered, anger, fear, something else tangled there. I can't, she said. Not yet. But her hand lingered against my chest, fingers trembling. And even as she turned away, she didn't let go. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. By Thursday night, campus was nearly empty. Halls echoing, lights humming, the air damp and charged. I hadn't planned to see her, but I found myself walking the familiar corridor anyway, my hand brushing the cold metal of her office door before I even realized what I was doing. It was slightly open. Light spilled through the gap, warm, low, inviting. Professor Hale? I said quietly. She looked up from her desk, startled at first, then tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from work. Cole, she breathed. You shouldn't be here. I know, I said. But you didn't answer my email. She sighed, rubbing her temple. Because I didn't know what to say. I stepped closer. Say anything. Just not nothing. She stared at me then, the weight of it stopping me mid-breath. There were shadows under her eyes, the faintest tremor in her hand as she set her pen down. This has gone too far, she said. I can't even focus in class anymore. Every time you look at me. I cut her off without meaning to. Then stop pretending you don't feel it. The words hung there, too raw, too exposed. She stood, slow and deliberate, crossing the distance between us. You have no idea what this costs me, she whispered. Then tell me. Her breath hitched as I stepped closer. The scent of rain clung to her clothes, her hair slightly damp. I reached up, hesitant, and brushed a loose strand from her face. She didn't move. Her eyes fluttered closed for a second, and in that second, I could feel everything she was trying not to say. When she opened them again, her voice broke on my name. Cole? I can stop, I said, though neither of us believed it. Her hand came up, fingers resting lightly against my chest, testing the distance. Then she leaned in, not fully, just enough that I could feel the warmth of her against me. I'm supposed to be the responsible one, she said. You still can be, I murmured. Just don't lie. Her laugh was quiet and aching. You think this is simple? No, I said. That's why I'm still here. The silence that followed was sharp, electric. She was trembling, not from fear, but restraint. I could see it in the way her shoulders rose and fell, the way her fingers curled against my shirt but didn't pull away. Then something shifted. Maybe it was the rain outside, or the way she suddenly met my gaze with that unguarded human ache. She reached up, fingers brushing the back of my neck, guiding me closer, a motion so careful it hurt. Tell me this isn't real, I whispered. She shook her head. I can't. Our foreheads touched. Just that, nothing more. Her breath was uneven, her lips close enough that every word brushed against my skin. If I do this, she said softly, there's no going back. I swallowed hard. Then don't stop. And just as the space between us vanished, a sound broke through. The office phone rang, loud and jarring. We froze. The moment shattered, hanging between us like static, fragile, unfinished, and impossible to forget. The phone stopped ringing, but the silence that followed was worse. She turned away, pressing her palms flat against the desk like she needed it to stay upright. I stayed where I was, too close still, the echo of her warmth lingering between us. I should answer that, she said finally. Her voice didn't sound like hers. Tight, careful. You didn't, I said. No, she murmured. I didn't. When she faced me again, her expression had changed. Not softer, guarded. Like something behind her eyes had shifted. I need to tell you something, she said. My stomach tightened. Okay. Her fingers toyed with her necklace, an absent motion that betrayed her nerves. That call, it wasn't random. The department's been asking questions. About what? About you, she said. About us. I blinked. There is no us. Her gaze cut to mine. Then you should start acting like it. The words hit hard, sharper than I expected. Did someone say something? She hesitated, a pause too long. One of the grad assistants overheard us last week. They thought something. The space between us suddenly felt dangerous. Real. You're telling me we've been reckless? She finished, voice breaking. Yes. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to steady the swirl in my chest. She watched me like she wanted to reach out but couldn't. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. I was trying to fix it, she said quietly. Before it ruined you. Ruined me. Not us. That word stung. I stepped forward and she stepped back, instinctively but too late. My hand brushed her arm as she moved, and she froze. Her skin was warm beneath my fingers, her breath shallow. You think I care about a rumor? I said. You should, she whispered. You're just starting your life. I'm halfway through mine. Don't say that. She met my eyes, something fierce and fragile sparking there. Then what do I say, Cole? That I think about you when I shouldn't? That I check my phone for your name and hate myself every time it's not there? Her voice cracked on the last word, and suddenly the room felt too small for both of us. You think this is one-sided? I said. You think you're the only one losing sleep over it? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I could see her pulse at her throat, quick and uneven. For a moment, everything, fear, guilt, want, collapsed into a single line between us. She reached for me, then stopped midway, hand trembling in the air. If you touch me again, she said softly, I won't stop it this time. I stepped closer, close enough that the air between us went thin. Her hand hovered near my chest, shaking. Then don't warn me, I whispered. Her breath caught, and then, from the hallway, voices. Laughter. Someone approaching. We broke apart, too fast, like we'd been burned. She turned away, pretending to organize papers, hands trembling. I stood there, heart hammering, both of us pretending the moment hadn't just happened. Then she said, without facing me, Come to my house tomorrow. No more hiding. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The decision had already been made. The next evening, the world felt unnaturally still. Rain had finally stopped, but the air carried its memory. Damp, heavy, expectant. I stood outside her house longer than I should have, hand hovering above the doorbell, pulse uneven. When she opened the door, she looked different. Not in clothes, still simple, understated, but in posture. Tired, maybe. Resolved. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. I wasn't sure either, I admitted. She stepped aside, letting me in. The living room was quiet except for the slow hum of an old clock. A single lamp threw soft light across the room, catching on her hair, the line of her collarbone. She handed me tea, then sat across from me. Too far, too polite. You wanted honesty, she said. So here it is. If this goes on, I could lose everything I've built. My job. My reputation. I nodded. I know. And yet, she continued, her voice low, when I hear your voice in the hallway, I forget all of that. I looked up. Her eyes weren't guarded now. They were open, raw, the way people look when they've stopped lying to themselves. You're not the only one who forgets, I said. She set her cup down, hands shaking slightly. Then what do we do with that? I didn't have an answer. I just stood, crossing the space between us slowly, waiting for her to stop me. She didn't. When I reached her, she stood too, our faces inches apart. Her breath was warm, the faintest tremor running through it. This isn't right, she whispered. I know, but it doesn't feel wrong. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. If I do this, I lose control of everything that still makes sense. Maybe that's what makes it real. She laughed. A short, broken sound, and shook her head. You shouldn't say things like that. You make me want to believe them. I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. My hand lingered, tracing the air beside her cheek without touching. She leaned in almost unconsciously, and that was enough. The world shrank to a single breath. Her hand rose, fingers resting on my jaw. Every small movement, every inch between us felt deliberate, earned, inevitable. I thought I could teach you something, she said, voice trembling. But it's me who's been learning how to feel again. I could taste the moment before it broke, the fragile pause between restraint and surrender. Then she leaned forward until our foreheads touched, eyes closed. No one will understand, she whispered. They don't have to. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The space between what we wanted and what we feared disappeared entirely. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady again. Quiet, but sure. Then this is my choice. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to, because in that silence I already knew it. Whatever line we'd drawn was gone, and both of us had crossed it. Not recklessly, but completely awake. And in that rare, impossible stillness, we finally understood each other. Not as professor and student, not as caution and impulse, but simply as two people who had run out of ways to pretend they weren't already falling. Morning came quietly. No rain this time, just a pale light pushing through her curtains, the kind that makes everything feel fragile and new. She was sitting on the couch, one knee drawn up, a mug of coffee balanced in her hands. Her hair was still damp from the shower, loose and softer than I'd ever seen it. When she looked up, she smiled, not the careful, professional smile from the classroom, but something smaller. Real. You're early, she said. You never told me what time to come. Her laugh was quiet, tired in a gentle way. You would have shown up anyway. Probably. I took a seat beside her, close enough that our knees touched. For a moment, neither of us spoke. There was no need to. The silence between us had changed. No longer heavy, just full. I keep thinking about what happens next, she said finally. Whether this survives outside of the walls we built it in. Do you want it to? She turned her head toward me, eyes searching mine. Yes, she said simply.
Ido.
Even if it scares me. Her honesty hit harder than any confession before. It was quiet but brave, the kind that doesn't need to be proven. I'm not asking for forever, I said. Just right now, whatever that means. Her lips parted like she wanted to answer, but instead she just reached for my hand. Her fingers slid between mine, hesitant at first, then sure. The warmth of her palm against mine felt like something earned. I've spent half my life avoiding things that felt too close, she said. You make me forget why I ever did. She leaned her head against my shoulder. The world outside moved softly. The hum of cars, the faint rustle of wind through wet leaves. Everything slowed down. For a while we just sat there, breathing in sync, saying nothing. Then she whispered, Do you ever think about how different we are? All the time, I said. It's kind of what I like about it. She smiled at that, tracing her thumb along my wrist. An absent, soothing motion. You make everything sound simple. Maybe it is, I said. Maybe we just complicate it because we're afraid it's real. Her laughter was barely a breath. You're too young to talk like that. I turned slightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. And you're too wise to still be pretending you don't need someone. She looked at me then, not with the caution of a teacher, but with the warmth of someone finally letting go. Maybe we both passed the test, she said. I leaned in, not for a kiss, but for something quieter. A forehead against hers, a stillness that said more than words ever could. In that moment, there was no age gap, no rule to break. Just two people who had found a small corner of truth and decided to stay there a little longer. The clock ticked softly in the background. She squeezed my hand once, firm and steady. Stay, she said, and I did. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?